A couple years ago when I used to be overweight, I would use any fitness app to help me try and lose weight. I would use calorie tracking apps, I use fasting apps, I use workout apps, and honestly none of them really help me because they don't give you a long-term goal. You end up just overpaying and they're so vague in terms of what goal that you need that it just doesn't even help you. So you just waste your time and money using them. But after all the years of trial and error, I was able to find one certain app that helped me greatly, and I think it might help you too. And in this video, I want to go over this specific app and talk about all the features and how it might help you in your own fitness journey. And once I go through everything about the app, I'm gonna give you my own personal rating out of 5 stars to see if it's actually worth your time and money, because trust me, I don't wanna waste your guys' time at all. So if you haven't heard of this app, is an app called Alpha Progression, and is a strength training app that claims to help any type of person, all the way from a beginner all the way up to a professional bodybuilder, or at least someone that's advanced. And in this case, just to let you guys know that for me, I have mainly been using the pro version for this time, so I'm mainly gonna just go over all of that. And this is also a sponsored video by Alpha Progression, so I am personally thankful for them on that. But just to let you guys know, they have no idea what I'm gonna say in this video. They are completely letting it up to me, so what you guys get is what they're gonna get. And there's a lot to unpack here, so let's get right into it. So the first claim that Alpha Progression makes is that it's able to make a complete plan from scratch, so you are able to start working out with complete ease. And that's honestly a bold thing to make, because a lot of other apps like Fitbod try to say the same thing, but honestly, it kind of sucks. So I want to see if it was actually worth it. And what you could do is that you could put in certain information such as like your weight, how often you've been training, what certain equipment that you have at your gym, and then after that, it will start compiling up a set of exercises with certain reps and sets, and then it'll just give it to you, and then you could just start using it. But most of the time when I see this, I'm obviously pretty skeptical, as I mentioned, because they can kind of pull anything out and just give it to you. So how valid is it? And for me, what I decided to do is that I actually decided to make multiple plans and see if it was actually worth it, because sometimes what they'll do is they'll just give you carbon copies of things. And I was honestly surprised that it didn't do that. Based off the information that I did, I put 2 completely different plans, and it actually gave me exercises related to those plans. And obviously you might be thinking, well, no duh, Dalton, because that's what the app's meant to do, but you'd be surprised. Sometimes they never do that because they want to save money or they're just too lazy to. So Alpha Progression, +1 for you, nice job. And in terms of the exercises that it can give you, it is honestly pretty crazy. It is like a ridiculous amount. They have about over 600, 700 exercises. And personally, I think that's a little bit too much, but you'd be surprised if you really are advanced and you want to take your training next level, then by all means, that is so helpful to have. Because let's say, for example, you want to do pull-ups. You could do wide grip pull-ups. You could do closer grip pull-ups. You could do chin-ups. You could do other things with exercises such as like wide push-ups. You could do close push-ups. You could do kneeling push-ups. It really caters to anything based off the information that you give it, which is so helpful because it actually takes your advice and it decides to give it to you. But the one thing that I do have to say about this is, like, if you are someone that wants to get out of the gym in and out really quickly, like let's say in 30 minutes, generally it's not going to cater that to you specifically, because the lowest it will go is like maybe an hour and 10 minutes. But if you do want to be lower, all you could just do is just lower the sets and the reps to get out a little bit faster, which is what I've been doing, so I can get out in maybe like 45 minutes if I really needed to and I'm in a time crunch. So that's just one thing to keep in mind when using this app. And speaking of like more advanced people, how does this actually cater to them? What is so special about it? Well, if you're not a beginner and you're more advanced, it really goes in depth with even more stuff, such as like your RIR, if you know what that is. It'll give you periodization, such as different types of sets and progressions over time, so you're not just doing a linear progression of, like, let's say, you know, what you've been doing to get your noob gains. Or there's a lot of different other intensity factors such as supersets. They have drop sets. They also have deload weeks if you really need that during your time. For, like, let's say for the next 4 weeks you feel really tired, it'll just give it to you, which for me is really important because I tend to go really hard at the gym, so I need that break or deload week, which is completely necessary. But while I do like the fact that they do have deload weeks, what I do wish that they has more intensity techniques such as like myo reps, cluster sets, and long length partials, because there are some people that still enjoy doing those. Like for me, I like doing long length partials at the last set, so that would be a good thing to have. Maybe some note that you could put on and it saves it for the next one. Just something like that, that would be pretty helpful. So mostly overall, for someone like a beginner all the way to a early advanced athlete or bodybuilder, this is where it mainly shines in. But once you reach past that stage, I feel like things could start getting a little bit limiting, but that is just my personal opinion. But a second huge claim that it makes is that it is able to progress you in your strength training journey so you can actually get from that early beginner all the way to the late advanced stage. And for this is really interesting because there are a lot of things that could go wrong in terms of this case, which for me, using it more and more often, I actually saw that wasn't really the case. What it will do is that as you start using the app more and more, it will start giving you recommendations of what you need. So let's say if you are doing bench press for maybe 40 pounds, what it will then recommend for the next week is that it might say, okay, you might need to do an extra few reps doing this based off the intensity that we think you're going. And it will just keep doing that with each exercise, with machines, with dumbbells, with kettlebells, you name it. It will literally just keep giving you recommendations. And this, I would say, is really helpful in terms of those people that don't know where to start. They don't know what they should do next, because a lot of times, yes, you can get noob games from the beginning, but you're gonna end up just screwing yourself over if you don't actually have a structured plan. So Alpha Progression does a really good job at that for you to get those long-term gains and not just solely plateau continuously. And it's also super helpful because in the long term, you get to see all the progress that you've made, which is so helpful with what Alpha Progression does compared to other apps like Strong, because if you're using Alpha Progression, you get to see the overall curve of what you have with the metrics that it gives you. And that is the other thing that makes is that is able to give detailed metrics on what you have, which I would say overall, it does a pretty decent job. And at first, it is kind of hard to really get a gauge on anything, but like all things, the more that you do it, the more that it will start seeing the trends of what you are making. What I would like to see though, in terms of the metrics app, because you can do a ton of things, you can track out your body weight, you can track all the exercises you've been doing, your overall strength. What personally for me, what I wish that they could do is that they would give you a forecast of these things of, hey, if you kept doing this over and over again, this is what we think you could reach at. But currently it doesn't do that. It only does it by the set per week, which is still really helpful. It does it way better than other apps. I just wish it did have that long-term, hey, this is what you would be in, let's say, a year if you kept using this app, which just, you know, from a person like me using it, I would find that personally really helpful. And for the metrics, if you decide to go specifically into each exercise, it will really go in depth on what you do. It gives you the complete history of all the exercises you've done in terms of this, which is, if you think about it, you have an endless log of all the exercises you've done, like 700. That's crazy. That's really good for what it has. And on top of that, it'll give you a good the range of motion, the stability factor, how good it is within your workout plan. And truth be told, if you don't want to have certain exercises, like let's say if you like others, you can always just replace it with a different one. But it will give you not a warning, but it will just give you a non-biased opinion of, hey, this is how good the range of motion is, and then this is how good the stability is for this exercise. So it also is a educational app in a sense, the more you keep using it. So since these two things are really what makes Alpha Progression, that definitely has a lot of pros, but it does have some cons as well to this. So for the pros, I would say is it mainly is really good at expecting the unexpected. There are a lot of things that you could start doing as a user and you could keep changing it, such as the exercises, and it will do its best to start catering to you instead of just giving up and says, okay, no, you shouldn't do this. That we should just stop. But honestly, I think it does a pretty good job at what it needs to do for, especially as the beginner lifter that has no idea what they're doing. And other thing is that it's really easy to set up. It doesn't really take a lot of work on your end to do it. It maybe takes 5 minutes tops, and then you get all the exercises that you want. And then lastly, is I think the price is actually pretty fair. And for this, at the time of this recording, it is about like $70, $80 for this per year. And for some people, they might say, wow, that's really expensive. But if you compare it to, let's say, a personal trainer that charges you $80 to up to like $200 per hour, if you've been to like a commercial gym, you know what I'm talking about. They generally do a really bad job and you don't even know it. But except for me, that someone has been with a personal trainer and has also trained people and is now used this app, I could say that it generally does a pretty good job at training people for what they want. So those are what I would say are the main pros of using this app. So while there are pros to this, there obviously are some cons to this app. And the first one I would say is that as the more experience that you get, the more diminishing returns there would be. because a lot of people don't know this, but generally in terms of getting stronger and stronger and stronger, it requires a less linear progression curve. So meaning that it's generally best to have lighter days on one day for, let's say, for legs, and then you have a harder day for training legs. And generally, at least for me, I've seen my strength go up crazy like that. But for maybe something like alpha progression, there will be a certain cap in terms of the training advice that it will give you, hence that it cannot entirely replace a really good trainer. Most trainers that are pretty crappy, yes, but except having a personal trainer that knows their stuff and they've trained like professionals, or at least trained to experience that they know what they're doing, it's really hard to combat that because they know you better than the app. And the other thing is that the app cannot factor everything about your life. So with personal trainers, they'll understand certain factors, whether you're sick, whether you're injured, or whether you're doing different sports, maybe such as like doing running or swimming or biking, anything else that really is other than bodybuilding. But for this case, it does not factor that 100%. And it would be good to factor that in, but truth be told, there are not a lot of apps that can really do that well, or at least that it's not their job to do that. And in this case, I would have to give some defense for alpha progression and that they don't have to do that for you. So I would say overall, this app is pretty decent. I would actually keep using it, and I'm not gonna just completely blow it off and just put it under the rug. I would actually recommend most people who are new to this and don't know anything about bodybuilding, it's, I would say, a really good app to start investing into. And if you decide to use the app as a more advanced lifter for at least a couple months, you might be able to dial in your training and also track more things better than maybe another app, or even like your notebook, for example, if you still use that. So having something more like alpha progression, I would say, is definitely a worth to have, or at least a try compared to most apps. So I highly recommend it. I give it overall maybe like a 4.3, 4.4 out of 5 stars in my opinion. So if you guys are interested at all, what you could do is that you can go down the link in the description below, and you'll be able to make on your first purchase for this 20% off, and you could just use my promo code Dalton and you'll be able to check out right then and there, make it super simple for you. But just to let you guys know that this is only applicable if it is your first order and if you're a new customer. And also make sure that you don't go anywhere else, like on the app, for example, and make the payment, because it will not work. So you have to use the link in the description below. So I highly recommend that if you want to take your strength training journey to the next level. And earlier in this video, I mentioned that I've tried a lot of other types of apps, and I ended up getting frustrated and annoyed of the types that I used, and I don't want that to happen to you. So if you want to figure out what the best dieting app it is for you, then make sure that you check out this video right here, and it'll go over everything in detail for your diet goals, and make sure you check it out, and I'll see you there in a second.